Welcome, Dr. Gutman.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Just hold on a second. You're absolutely right. This is an exceptionally well-fit, great-looking audience.
Yes, we were talking about you guys before we got up here. We're very excited to sit down and chat about glutathione and all of the things that I know you guys are here to learn about. And let's just get into it. Obviously, we just went through Dr. Gutman's background, and it is a very impressive medical and academic background. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering what led him into this role where he is now promoting this natural product.
Wow, that's a good question. What is an academic physician doing, talking about something you can get without a prescription? Natural product. That's a good question. Well, just to go back in time a bit, in the 3 years that it took for me to graduate from medical school, I had maybe 2 afternoons studying nutrition. 2 afternoons in 3 years. Back then, if you wanted to know anything about nutrition or supplements, you needed to learn it on your own. And I went into a field that was very typical of conventional medicine. I went to emergency medicine. And between the times I spent in Northern Canada, in Atlanta, Georgia, at McGill University, I got really good at emergency medicine. I was an expert at fixing things that were broke. And I ended up teaching emergency medicine at McGill University for a number of years. But something happened to me. Something happened. I'm looking out there in the audience and I see same thing happening to a few of you, or might soon happen to a few of you. I turned 40. And here I was with 40 years old, 2 kids, a house. I had a minivan. And emergency medicine is kind of like professional sports. So you're 40 years old, find something else to do because it's just too stressful and demanding. So I figured I become an expert at fixing things that are broke. Why don't I focus on preventing things from getting broken in the first place? Which at that point in my life made a lot more sense. So I went into family medicine. And I found myself all of a sudden being locked in a room with a single other person who had the audacity to ask me questions. See, in the emergency department, people are either too tongue-tied or too drunk to... And these people are asking me things like, Dr. Gutman, I'm 60 years old. What kind of exercise should I be getting? Dr. Gutman, I've been putting on weight. What kind of diet should I take? And Dr. Gutman, I'm feeling tired. Can you tell me about supplements? And my answer to them was, I shrug my shoulders. Let me tell you something about doctors. One thing doctors hate, almost more than anything, is being stupid. And how many times can you shrug your shoulders before your ego takes a beating? So I took it upon myself to study vitamins, to study supplements, to study nutrition, to study exercise. And I was in my office one day pondering all this, and into my office comes this gentleman called Howdy McDappy, a patient of mine. Actually, he doesn't come into my office. He bursts into my office. And Howdy was an ex-Golden Gloves boxing jockey. So when he bursts into your office, he demands a lot of attention. And Hattie's all sweaty and bug-eyed and saying, Dr. Gutman, I've discovered something that is going to slow down the aging process. It's good for Alzheimer's. It's good for diabetes. It's good for cancer. It's good for lung disease. It's good. And I went, whoa, Hallie. I went, whoa, howdy. I thought that would get a bigger laugh in Texas. Whoa, howdy. It sounds like you're reading off a can of snake oil. How can one substance possibly have all those clinical indications? And his answer to me was a big thud on my table. And it wasn't in big fists on my desk. It was a pile of about 20 pounds of research. And he said, Jimmy, you're going to go home and you're going to read this. Most of my patients don't speak to me that way, but being a boxing champion, I guess you get away with that. And what Howdy managed to do by leaving me with that pile of research was absolutely ruin the next 3 months of my life, because I couldn't stop reading them. I was canceling clinics to go to the library and have the internet then. And I was reading about something that was both fascinating and embarrassing. Embarrassing because I never heard about it. Fascinating because it was absolutely new. And it had such tremendous potential. And I was reading about glutathione. And fortunately, one of the major authors, one of the major researchers that was writing about this glutathione pretty much lived in my backyard in Montreal. And I said, Howdy, this is really amazing. I want you to set up a meeting with me and Dr. Gustavo Bunos. That's who was the genius behind all of this work. And sure enough, Howdy was able to do it. I guess he punched his way in. And I met with Dr. Bunos. I met with him for 4 hours. And after those 4 hours, it was time for me to change my career again. This was too important for me to let pass by. This was just too outrageous. And I decided I was going to change my life and I was going to start studying and working on glutathione. So that was 30 years ago. And here I am today without a regret.
It's an amazing story. We're so glad you're here. So obviously you have gone on to really become an authority on glutathione in the space.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about something that I talk a lot about on my podcast is finding our purpose, right? And it seems like when he came into your office and threw that book on your desk, something ignited inside of you. There was a different level of passion and interest than, what you had currently been experiencing. Can you talk a little bit more about how you knew you had found your purpose?
Well, my purpose was twofold. One was to really run with this new concept of raising glutathione. This was absolutely going to change the way medicine was being practiced, and it has. But the other thing that was really, really dear to me was to take this whole field of supplements and bring it into the modern world. And by modern world, I mean by the acceptance of physicians, researchers, and doctors. And the only way to drag this field of nutritional supplements into science was through research. And so I wanted to make the field of natural medicine more credible. And that was going to be through research, which we have at Immunitech been doing for 30 years now. And so I've made a little bit of inwards that way.
Yeah. Can you share with the audience what your exact role is now for those that don't know?
Um, I am a consultant to Immunotech, which makes a product called Immunical, which raises glutathione. And my role over the last 30 years is constantly evolving. Um, right now, I'm called the chairman of the scientific advisory committee, which is the role that they give to older people. Um, you take it a little bit easier, but be there as a consultant role to many of the other things that are going on at the company. So I advise on product development. I will invent new products. I will oversee a lot of the research done on glutathione and Immunical, and for moral support.
Ah, you wear all the hats. Okay, for the person in the audience that doesn't know, let's get into kind of the glutathione 101. So, what exactly is at its core glutathione?
Glutathione is the most important substance in your body that you've never heard of. And not a lot of people are aware of glutathione, but it is essential to life. And it appears in each and every single cell of your body, not just in your body, in all the cells of all of the mammals we know of all the animals we know of, birds, fish, insects, plants, all of life has glutathione in their cells.
So, if it is so prevalent and important, why is it that it's not something that people are really talking about?
So you asked, why don't more people know about it? And certainly when I started 25, 30 years ago, I would give a lecture to a group of doctors, and most doctors at that point wouldn't know about it. But now there's been a real shift over the last 2 years. Um, I'm going to talk to you about a website called pubmed.gov, as some of you may have heard of. It is a website put out by the National Institutes of Health, and it contains all of the publications printed in medical journals and peer-reviewed journals. So anybody that wants to know the original research done by scientists and researchers, they go to PubMed. Researchers are on PubMed every day. Doctors that do research are on PubMed frequently. Most scientists are on PubMed all the time. There are over 200,000 articles available on PubMed on the topic of glutathione. Now, that besides being a big number, let me put that into context. When you look up vitamin C on PubMed, you'll find maybe 70,000 articles. When you look up vitamin E, you'll find maybe another 40. So understand this, there are more articles written on glutathione than on vitamin C and vitamin E put together. So this is certainly in the hands of doctors now, and doctors are much more familiar with glutathione now, but this information is now making its way into the general public. And in the past couple of years, I'm seeing hundreds and hundreds of websites, for example, that talk about glutathione. And we're on the cusp of something really huge. We're on the cusp of everybody finding out the benefits of glutathione.
Well, we're very excited to hear about those benefits. So, can you speak a little bit about the major roles of glutathione? I know that there's this acronym called IDEA. Can you walk us through what each of those letters means?
Yes, if I were giving a lecture to a group of very technical doctors, I would be able to talk about 40 or 50 things that glutathione does inside of the body. But for everybody here, remember this statement: glutathione, what a great idea. IDEA. So what does the I stand for? The I stands for the immune system. And we are discovering more and more about the immune system now. The immune system is still very much in its infancy in our understanding, but we do know that people with low glutathione levels suffer from immunodeficiency. For example, AIDS patients have, by definition, low glutathione levels. And people with optimal glutathione levels, their immune system has a chance of working optimally. So think of glutathione literally as food or fuel for your immune system. And this is very, very big these days with COVID going around and the flu going around. And there are hundreds of papers looking at glutathione and the flu and glutathione and COVID. This is clearly established. D stands for detoxification. What are we talking about? We're talking of the breakdown product of cigarette smoke, of automobile exhaust, of pesticides, of herbicides, of a list of thousands of chemicals in our environment that we depend on a glutathione for detoxifying. So I tell people that next to water, there probably isn't a more important detoxification substance in our body.
Wow.
Yeah. E stands for energy. And I looked out my window earlier and saw everybody exercising. So good for you. So you know about energy, and you certainly know about energy depletion. There are so many things I can talk about energy on a microscopic level, on a molecular level. But let me just mention that, well, the Olympics are on now. Start today?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, when I'm going to watch the TV, Olympics on TV with Mauricio later on today, we're going to look at the TV and go, he's on immune account, she's on immune account, he's on immune account. There are dozens and dozens of Olympic athletes, Canadian Olympic team, American Olympic team, Polish, British, taking immune account.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been volumes.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And finally, A stands for antioxidants. And this is the role that most people are familiar with. Glutathione is called the master antioxidant. Now, that sounds more like a marketing term than a scientific term. But master antioxidant, why? We know of over 2,000 different antioxidants. All of them depend on glutathione for being recharged and recycled. See, when vitamin C picks up a free radical, which is a very nasty molecule that causes damage to your cells, there's a production of oxidation. When a vitamin C picks up a free radical, it's neutralized the free radical, but it's neutralized itself as well. How does the vitamin C continue working? It actually hands such free radical off to a glutathione system, which has the ability of getting it out of your cell. So all of the other antioxidants that we know of depend on glutathione for their recycling and being recharged, which means that all of the supplements you take, you're getting many, many more miles out of. You probably don't need as many supplements. And all of the fruits and vegetables that you're eating, you're going to get more miles out of them as well if your glutathione levels are good.
Wow.
So, A, the master antioxidant, glutathione.
I think we're all sufficiently sold at this point. It's very clear that it has so many different roles within the body. I can only imagine that with someone's glutathione levels are low, that you will experience symptoms, feeling off. Can you speak a little bit more to what that might look like when someone's glutathione is low?
But there are so many ways to describe this. Everything from feeling unwell, restless, anxious, fatigued. Those are common signs of glutathione deficiency, to a preponderance of episodes where you catch a cold. Everybody goes to the office, you might have 100 people in your office, 40 of them have a cold. Why the other 60 don't? Well, it might have something to do with glutathione levels. To, I guess, the worst case scenario is coming down with something like cancer. And it's been shown quite clearly, statistically, people with low glutathione levels have a much stronger likelihood of developing cancer. And now these days, we've been doing a lot of work on the human genome, and I'm sure you've been reading about that everywhere. People who have genetic deficiencies in glutathione are much prone to the development of cancer, of lung disease, and other ailments. So you don't want to be low. It's what it's all.
Certainly. What are some day-to-day factors or things that we're exposed to that can deplete those levels?
Well, there's one disease that all of you are suffering from. And I hope you suffer from this disease for a long time. And that's the aging process. Someone my age, between 40 and 80, I've lost 10% of my glutathione every decade, which means if I wasn't doing anything about it, I could be half of my glutathione gone. So the older you get, the lower your glutathione levels become, unless you are aggressive repleting it. But when you measure glutathione levels as people who are like 100 years old, you look at these centenarians, you find that they have high glutathione levels. But what's going on? Levels are dropping. But if you measure it in 100-year-old patients, their glutathione levels are falling. And guesses? Diet. The woman said diet will definitely help. But the real answer is that's why they're 100 years old. Because they had the genetic ability to maintain high glutathione levels. And their friends and their enemies that didn't no longer are on this world. This is natural selection at its finest. So the aging is one thing. Our polluted environment, I don't need to talk about that. And given that most known pollutants are detoxified by glutathione, so I guess if you're living in Houston or you're living in Los Angeles or you're living in New York, you're at much higher risk.
Yeah.
But I've found out that if you live in the countryside, if you're a farmer, your risks are just as high because of the exposure to pesticides and herbicides.
Yeah.
So
Everywhere.
yes. Do you all eat well? Oh, you're honest. Most audiences will pick up their hands and say, even if you wanted to eat well, you couldn't eat well unless you were growing your own produce and bringing up your own cattle if you're into eating beef. The produce that we get in our supermarkets are so deficient in nutrients and vitamins that it's a crime. Before I went into medicine, I was in agriculture. And I had a group of friends that got this big grant. I won't name the multinational food company that gave it. They had a grant, $1 million grant to come up with a fartless bean. Because a lot of people don't eat beans because it makes you fart. Were they investing in the quality of nutrition in the bean? No. You think scientists studying tomatoes are worried about nutrition? No, they're worried about making square tomatoes so they don't roll off the counter at the groceries. So it's really hard to eat well, even if you're trying. So many other reasons: smoking, just being ill, being under stress, There was a study looking at glutathione levels in people that practice transcendental meditation. Calm yourself down. The people who practice transcendental meditation had higher glutathione levels. Why? Because they had less stress.
Stress.
So
the big one.
The big one.
I taught you about it a lot on my podcast. So there you go. Okay, if someone is suspecting that their glutathione levels might be low, can they go to the doctor and simply test for it, or are there other markers they should be looking for?
Is there a glutathione test? There are many tests available online for $30 or $40, but don't waste your money. Don't waste your money. When we do glutathione testing in our studies, we get fresh blood. We spin it down in a centrifuge. We extract the white blood cell layer, and we measure the glutathione levels inside of the white blood cell. And furthermore, we measure oxidized glutathione and reduced glutathione and do a ratio between them. This is an extremely arduous and expensive methodology, which right now probably will cost you at least a couple $100. When you see glutathione tests being offered online, what are they anyways? Are they plasma glutathione? Are they serum glutathione? Are they red blood cell glutathione? All of which are not where you want to be looking. And is it actually glutathione that they're looking for? And are they looking at the glutathione of oxidized and reduced ratios? So I'm getting a little bit technical. The answer is it's really hard to get a glutathione level.
Yeah.
My rebuttal is, why would you want to take a glutathione level? Because glutathione levels will fluctuate even during the day. For example, when do you usually notice that you're feeling cold? It's usually you wake up in the morning. Oh God, you're going to get sick today. Why in the morning? Because your glutathione levels drop overnight. So wherever your glutathione levels are during the time of day and after whatever meal you've eaten to do your blood test, doesn't matter. You need to be keeping your glutathione levels up all the time.
Makes sense. And especially if they're fluctuating throughout the day. It sounds like it's how it's starting to get a gauge on it.
Absolutely.
And also with aging working against us, it seems like we can assume that they're probably going down with time and we should be supplementing in some way.
We can assume that quite correctly.
Are there glutathione-rich foods that you could recommend for people?
So the question is, are there foods that have glutathione in them? There are glutathione-rich foods, but eating glutathione doesn't work that well. You want to eat foods that have proteins that contain the building blocks to make glutathione. Some of those foods are, for example, cruciferous vegetables. Okay, so like broccoli, but you'd have to eat enough broccoli whereby the environmental exposure of your spouse during his or her sleep would be toxic. Eggs, but they need to be raw eggs, because when you cook these proteins, they change their natural shape. They may have good nutritional value, but they've lost their biological value to raise glutathione. So eating raw eggs, there's some danger with that. Fresh milk, I'm not even sure whether you can buy fresh milk these days or how available is that. But fresh milk, again, has some dangers with contamination with infectious disease. Plus, you're getting a lot of lactose. You're going to be getting a lot of fat. May not like that. Raw meat. If you like your steak blue on the inside. And of course, you're probably eating meat as well. So yeah, there are precursors in foods, but the biologically active precursors are difficult to get from our everyday diet.
Okay, so the word precursor, I think, is really important for us to touch on here, because as I was doing my research about glutathione, I was very shocked I think especially because there's so many products out now and ads for things that are not necessarily a precursor. Can we discuss why it is so important to have a precursor to glutathione rather than just taking glutathione in its whole form?
That's probably the most important question that we're going to look at today. You can't eat glutathione and expect it to raise the glutathione levels in your body. You can't eat glutathione whether it's in foods, and you can't eat glutathione whether they're in a supplement or not. And there are thousands of supplements that are feeding you glutathione. And there are thousands of research articles that tell you that that doesn't work. When you eat glutathione, it becomes rapidly broken down in your digestive system. I'm coming up behind Mike. And very little, if any, of the glutathione make it from your food to your cells. Glutathione gets broken down in your body, and mostly by an enzyme called GGT, but we'll say technical talk for another time. Eating glutathione doesn't work. How do you raise glutathione? Remember, glutathione is found inside of your cells. So you need to feed your cells the building blocks or specific nutrients that your cells use to make glutathione. It's that simple. And these specific nutrients or building blocks we call precursors. So to raise glutathione levels, you need to eat glutathione precursors, not glutathione. And there are drugs that supply glutathione precursors. And of course, there's Immunocal.
Yes. That leads us beautifufly into the Immunocal conversation. Can you share with the audience what Immunocal is, the fact that it is one single ingredient, which I think is really incredible, and someone that cares a lot about ingredients. So when there's one and it's very well patented, you know it's a great product.
Yes.
Talk to us about Immunocal.
Immunocal is defined as a specially prepared whey protein isolate. So it's made from whey, which comes from milk, comes from mother's milk. Are there other wheys on the market? Whey is a very popular supplement, and I'm sure many of you people that work out are also taking whey proteins for your nutrition. And the whey protein itself is a fantastic source of nutrition. It's a fantastic source of amino acids, and it's a very clean, isolated product. But what is the difference between Immunocal and other whey protein? Again, this is another key question. Whey is a byproduct most of the time of milk production. So when you make milk, you end up with whey on the side. And there was a time where whey was just being thrown away. But now we've realized that it has very distinct nutritional advantages. But in the making of dairy, in making milk products, you need to pasteurize your product. And you need a lot of agitation and mixing and blending. What is pasteurization? Pasteurization is heating. If you heat certain proteins, they change their three-dimensional shape. This is something that we call denaturization. A denatured protein has its shape changed because it's either been heated up or mechanically agitated. The vast majority of commercial whey proteins, whether they're concentrates or isolates or just whey proteins, are pasteurized and mechanically agitated. And they come in beautiful forms where you just put them into liquid, you put them into water, and they dissolve instantly. And you know right away that they have been denatured. Immunical, for example, if you put it into water and it floats on top of it, it's a little bit difficult to mix. It takes a bit of effort. We have developed a way to extract these glutathione precursors from milk in order to maintain the three-dimensional natural shape of this protein. This is as natural as you can get. This is why regular milk doesn't have any glutathione precursors. This is why only raw eggs and not cooked eggs don't have glutathione precursors. So we're able to deliver something called bonded cysteine, which is a specific amino acid. Bonded cysteine is different from regular cysteine. You can find cysteine supplements. They don't raise glutathione. Bonded cysteine is the cysteine that's part of a larger protein that's undenatured. So it sounds like a bit of a technical answer, but that's why Immunical works and other whey proteins don't work.
So is it fair to say if you're using a scoop of generic protein powder in your morning smoothie, that is not creating, it's not a precursor for glutathione in your body?
Generally speaking, no. Some higher weight protein isolates, you might be getting some precursors, but not to be compared with Immunical, which is the richest source of natural precursors, certified precursors that you can find.
And for the person that might be taking a liposomal glutathione, which I'm curious if anybody in here is. It's okay to admit, we want to know. Okay, how does, obviously that is directly glutathione. I assume it's raising glutathione temporarily in the body, or is it not even at all?
Liposomal glutathione is a glutathione molecule that's wrapped up in a fatty layer. And this fatty layer is supposed to protect the glutathione from being broken down, both in the digestive tract and in the bloodstream. Does it? No. The entire, this is where I get a little emotional. This is me mad. The entire liposomal glutathione market is based on one clinical study done years ago that showed that glutathione levels were elevated after liposomal glutathione ingestion. One paper. Let me describe this paper to you. Number one, it was done in two groups of 6 people. 6 people. Not 100, not 1,000, not 100,000. 6 people. And they gave them 2 different doses of liposomal glutathione. As it turns out, the higher dose of liposomal glutathione ended up with the lower dose of actual glutathione measurement in the cell, which makes no sense, probably because it was such a small sample size. But here's the thing that for anybody who's into science or in medicine or research has to appreciate. There was absolutely no placebo control. It was compared to nothing. It wasn't compared to another protein. It wasn't compared to another way of raising glutathione. It wasn't even compared to a group of people who ate nothing. It is essentially, and even a medical student will look at this paper and say, please, this is not a paper. The whole industry is based on that one paper. But they've been very successful in marketing. And I'm sure that many of the people in this audience have at least tried with the liposomal glutathione. You just don't want to raise your hands.
Well, now we know better, so we don't have the excuse, right? On the note of studies, can you talk more about the studies that have been done on Immunical?
So we mentioned at the beginning of the talk that one of my objectives was to see natural products be brought up close to the status where doctors and scientists and other very skeptical people can begin to accept them. And doctors won't accept products that don't have research. And I'll tell you that still the majority of natural supplements, although they may claim to have research, are not referring to research that they've done on their individual supplement. For example, I told you that there's 200,000 articles on glutathione. Well, anybody selling a glutathione supplement can say, yeah, we have 200,000 studies. Do you have any studies on your supplement? And most companies, I'd say over 95% of companies, have zero studies. Immunotech has over 100 studies. 100 studies done using and looking at Immunicare. And we have close to 30 studies that we call gold standard studies. What is a gold standard study? It's a study done in humans that's double-blinded, placebo-controlled, statistically relevant study. These are the type of studies, the class of studies, gold standard studies that any health professional needs to see before he or she recommends a supplement to a patient. We've got more than anybody.
Incredible.
I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of her.
If there is one thing that you would like our audience to take away today from this conversation about glutathione, what would that be?
I think that time goes on and we recognize more and more about the benefits of glutathione. Right now, every month I see another 5,000 articles written on glutathione. Once the general public starts to appreciate these benefits, people will be raising their glutathione levels as commonly as they take a multivitamin in the morning, as commonly as you brush your teeth. This is coming.
As we look to the future, what excites you the most about the research that's happening in this space?
I think the next big area that science is going to uncover is the role that the brain plays and all the biochemistry and things related to brain function, including physical and physiological and philosophical and emotional inputs that the brain has. And as we start to understand the brain better, again, there are just huge research teams now looking at the role of glutathione in brain function. And there are ways of measuring glutathione by looking at a live living brain using specifically well-tuned MRI machines. So we can measure glutathione levels in the brain. It's a very rare, very expensive thing to do. But as that becomes common, well, then we'll really make strides and bounds.
Well, we're very excited to follow along with that and have you translate it to us. Okay. Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Gutman.
Thank you, Orisinis. Thank you.